There he is.
Hi, Kurt Zimmerman, alcoholic.
Hey, buddy.
Thanks, Marty. Yeah, well, I felt the same way when I met you. When I met Chris. There's certain people you connect with. There's just certain people that there's just a transference of energy. And I'll tell you a little story about it. I was speaking at some meeting, I can't remember, a couple of weeks ago, and the guy called me and he said, "Hey, I've never heard you, but somebody said, I really need to listen to you. And, the meeting, there's like 300 or 400 people." And I'm like, "Can I get the Zoom link?" And he's like, "Well, yeah. And all these people have spoken." He named all these people. None of them I knew. And I said, "Can I get the Zoom link?" And we did this about 4 or 5 times. I was like, this is not pertinent. Because like Marty said, we're all a bunch of drunks. This is the same playing field. Saying that, I see John there, Jimmy, Elizabeth. Saying that, if there's anything I say that goes over your head, Marty will translate at the end of the meeting. No, I'm just kidding. You guys started with the set-aside prayer. And it's really funny because I hear it in different versions. I've been listening to it since 1987 when we put it together in a workshop. And so this is a copy of it. It's prayer number 1. So the reason we put this in a format in this workshop was because a lot of people say, well, that prayer is not in the big book. And so we took, I'm going to just read it since you guys told me I have an hour. There's several spots in the book where this prayer came from. Now, it was my understanding that Don Pritz gave this to Joe. And then I used this the first time I went through the steps, but let me just give you so the prayer is, God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about myself, my disease, the steps, especially you, for an open mind, new experience with myself, my disease, the steps, especially you. Big book references. Page 42, paragraph 3. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window. Page 46, paragraph 2. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Page 47, paragraph 1. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. Page 48, paragraph 1. Besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. Page 49, paragraph 3. We have traveled this dubious path, beg of you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. Last one, page 58, paragraph 3. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil till we let go absolutely. So those were the reference points from where that came from. Now, when Marty said, that was fun. That was funny when Kevin said, when Marty says we, it means Marty. I was thinking about that. The first time I heard the tradition, it says, our common welfare comes first. My translation was, my common welfare comes first. That's how I read it. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. That sounds good. So with that, what I did is I have a few notes along with the big book, because there were some certain points I wanted to hit on before I kind of got into 10, 11, just to kind of prepare the way. And one of them was, let me just, most of you guys know, I kind of always start this thing. I thank God I'm not suffering from what's not happening anymore. I really, really mean that. My problem, just like the book said, centered in my mind. And I didn't know Well, like Einstein said, I didn't know I was trying to fix a problem with a problem. And so one of the things I wrote down was thoughts don't ruin your day. It's faith in the thought system that ruins your day. I had faith in a thought system. I didn't know this because that's what it said in the big book on page 52. It said, without knowing it, I'd been brought here by a certain kind of faith. The key for me in this was not knowing it. So what was the faith that I had, that I always had? I didn't have to get it, I had it. The faith that I had was I had faith in the thought system. They call it God a reason in the big book. And what I had faith in was a thought system that created a story about what I saw or what I experienced. And that story created a lot of mental anxiety. And usually the finger was pointed at you, you caused it, not me. And but I had faith in that thought system. And the reason I had faith in that thought system is because I didn't have access to anything else. And this is where I'm getting into 10 and 11. I just listened to a narrative all the time in my head. And, I got a buddy, he said, look, if let's just say Marty was off the rails and he was telling me a story about something that happened to him, and I was listening to that, I wouldn't listen to Marty very long. It wouldn't drive me nuts because it's Marty's thoughts, right? But when I listen to my own, I think they're my own. Like we're all doing the same thing around here. Everybody's just creating the same thing. We just say it different ways, different experiences. And what I got was we all have feelings, we all have thoughts. And the funny thing about that is we've never seen either one of those. Nobody's ever seen a thought. Nobody's ever seen a feeling. But we rely heavily on it. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's just a thought. And we think that's the truth. And that was the delusion I was under, just like the big book said. I was a victim of this delusion that I could wrest satisfaction if I managed well. And what my managing did, it created more unmanageability. That's what it did. And so the price I had to pay for that was I had to drink it 19 years. And, I love that promise. You don't regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. I don't say, it sounds funny when I say, thank God I drank it 19 years. It's not really thank God. But, that was, as Koya said to me when I was drinking in Newport Beach one night, I got some news for you. You're not going to understand it, but all this is part of that decision you made. Well, that just went right over my head. And he was right. I didn't understand it. But I missed what he was saying. See, what I missed was, I pulled a specific event out of 40 years of being in AA. I pulled a specific event out and I said, oh, this is all part of it. That's not what he was talking about. What he was talking about was this process of being on track, off track, on track, off track, off, was all part of it. This was the decision you made, but I didn't know that. And it's one of the reasons that I could never constructively review my day, because I always did it through the lens of guilt and shame. And that came out destructive. I was always beating myself up. But the truth of the matter was I wasn't beating myself up. The condition that I suffered from was beating me up. This condition of self. And what I've come to find out is that condition's not me. And as soon as I saw that the condition wasn't me, the possibility to be free from it became available. But as long as I was identified as the condition, there was no possibility to be free from it. I was trying to be free for it. I was trying to be, I thought I'm going to have an awakening here and I'm going to be here to witness it, like there's that kind of construct of thinking. So let me go into this just a little more. Bear with me. And then we'll get into the 10th step and I'll start talking about it. So this is just a little outline of what I just said. Conceptual understanding is not transformative. You need it to open the doors to another type of understanding. Because the intellect is the bouncer of the heart. Felt understanding doesn't come through your intellect. It is saying that it's not possible, or that's not plausible, or you can't get sober, or whatever. In principle, so you need the intellectual discourse in order to allow your intellect to relax and give yourself permission to have a different kind of understanding. So it's like kind of the pause when agitated or doubtful. When I do that, there's a space. And when there's a space, something can come in. You could call it a revelatory insight. You could call it a download. You could call it whatever you want to call it. It's kind of like that. Oh. It's a sense feeling. It's not your head. So let me just start with this, and let me get on the page. So it says this thought brings us to step 10. So we could back up a little bit. And I'm going to back up to, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. New. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. That existential crisis of unworthiness that we all came in with. It says it'll disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes. They always materialize if we work for them. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. I think it's interesting they say mistakes. It's not fault at this point. We vigorously commence this way of living as we clean up the past. We've entered the world of the spirit. So let me just stop there. So if you never entered the world of the spirit, how do you know what it looks like? Well, I think if you read the book descriptively rather than instructively, I think it just described what it looks like to be in the world of the spirit. I comprehend the word serenity. I know peace. I've been released from fear. I'm not suffering from what's not happening anymore. See, it's like, it's very descriptive. I know how to comprehend the word serenity. I know peace. I comprehend the word serenity and I know peace. This is gnosis. This isn't intellectual knowledge. This is gnosis. This is knowing from a different place. This is direct experience with that. So I think when they say we entered the world of the spirit, I think that's what they're talking about. They're talking about there's something that starts to wake up in us. You know, a lot of us call it conscious awareness, or I'm not my thoughts. It's said a bunch of different ways. The big book says this awareness is the essence of a spiritual experience, or more religious members call it God consciousness, back in the back of the book. This awareness that sees, oh, I'm not suffering from what's not happening anymore. I'm not getting on that train. See, I know where that train goes. It goes to one place. That's where that train goes. So there's an ability to recognize this intellectual discourse. It's a fear-based system. It's either rooted in the past or it's rooted in the future, but it's always pulling from there. It's never present. See, and when you comprehend the word serenity and you know peace, that's presence. That's presence. I have a friend, he says, you don't need to get in a moment. He said, you can't be out of a moment. He said, when you're in a moment, you have so much intellectual overlay based on the past or the future that you seemingly aren't here. But you're here. You're just not consciously aware you're here because you're in a story about something that's not happening. So I kind of wanted to just kind of start with that. So we're not just jumping into the deep end of the pool and everybody's drowning. So another thing I like to say is this, and I have deep respect for that big book. Believe me, it's my meme. It's how I translate other spiritual text. It's like my meme for understanding. I go, oh, I'll read something from the Sufis, and I'll go, oh, it says that in the big book. See, it's like, Don C., good friend of mine, mentor, I call him a sponsor, but he still hasn't answered me. I asked him 11 years ago, he still hasn't answered me. But he said, somebody asked him one time, if you had to give up your native tradition for AA, what would you give up? And he said, I'd give up my native tradition. Because the 12-step process and AA and you people are what helped him come into an awareness that understood his native tradition. See? Without that, it was like we're working at the level of mind, So what I was going to say, I prepped for it. The menu is not the meal. I ate this book for a long time and it didn't produce the results because I was worshiping the menu, not the meal. And I don't think that's a wrong move, but I think it's a stage-specific move in how we move through this process. I think I had to do that, just like I had to beat people up with a big book. I was so excited. I mean, I probably ran more people away than I brought in, And I remember Pritz said one time, if that doesn't happen, something's missing. Like you kind of got to get excited about this thing, right? And I think that was part of the revelatory experience that happened when I was released after drinking after 19 years was, I'd just been managing with spiritual principles the whole time. I really wasn't, but I was managing with my ego's interpretation of spiritual principles, very different. I have an intellectual understanding of it. So that would look like, well, let me just say, like if we said honesty, that would be the principle, right? So I was, that looked like, well, if I bought something and you gave me $10 too much, well, I go back in the store and I give you the change. And I said, I'm being honest. But the experience that I had 11 years ago was a little different. So honesty looked like this. It didn't look like the same as intellectual honesty. It looked like intuitive honesty. It looked like insight, clarity, the ability to see truthfully. It looked like you could see beyond the veil. There was access to something else. And I love the way that's referenced in the book. Every one of these people have gained access to and believe in. You gain access to this, guaranteed you'll believe in it. Because it's a paradigm shift. So it says we commence this way of living, way of living. Oh, I must have missed that first 19 years. I thought it was a way of working the steps. It was like, you know, it was a way of living. So this was, at this point, I'm trying to integrate this way of living. Now, here's how I explained it to Koyas. I said, I called him. I said, I want you to sponsor me. Now, before you say anything, I want to explain this. I said, I want you to sponsor me, but I'm not going to call you and ask you how to manage my life. I got it. I got it. Like, I've seen Santa Claus. He's not real. I don't have to revisit that every week to remind myself Santa Claus doesn't exist. I got it. I said, but let me explain. I said, there's a part in the book that said, we stepped from bridge to shore. Reason it brought us so far, but we couldn't quite step ashore. Well, I don't think I stepped ashore. I think I was carried there. I think that was the part, you know, people say grace or. And I said, this happened to me in 1986. I had a huge revelatory experience, released me from drinking. And I said, I stepped from bridge to shore, or metaphorically, I was carried. And I got on this island, and guess what? For 19 years, I thought I knew how to navigate the island. And I said, the pygmies almost killed me. I said, so what I want you to do is I want you to help me. I'm on that shore again. And I said, I'm not moving from this spot until I know that there's somebody who knows how to navigate this spiritual dimension and integrate it into my life. So that's what I said to him. Now, I bet if you ask him, he go, I don't remember that, because he always says that. I don't remember saying that. But that was the deal. It's like, how do I do this? How do I integrate these principles? Like, well, part of it was, you know, doing what the book said, which was real simple. You know, it was like, okay, when pause, when agitated or doubtful, pause. You know, it was like a practice. It wasn't like it wasn't easy. When I first did it, I did it for a week. I came back. I said, I failed the test. He goes, what test? I said, the test you gave me. You told me to pause. I said, I paused. I didn't get shit done all week long. He goes, that wasn't a test. He said, well, the whole point of that was to see how much you run in this narrative of self. And like the light went on. So our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Well, I mean, that tells you kind of right there. I mean, I just kind of described that. It's like understanding and effectiveness. Everybody has a different interpretation of that. I think it's, you know, I think it's about God as you understand him, because that's what the book said. It doesn't say you don't understand him. It says you have an understanding. So those understandings could be the promises. I comprehend the word serenity. I know peace. See, like grace. I know what that means. I know what it means to be surrendered versus use surrender as a tactic of management. See, I know what that means. There's a difference. So it says, this is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. Well, this is the first time it really took the weight off. Like, this isn't about perfection. This is about a practice. I'm going to do this the rest of my life. I'm going to learn how to integrate these principles. So it kind of, for me, it took the weight off my shoulders. Right? Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Well, these are all manifestations of self. So they're saying, look for these manifestations of self. Well, I'll go back to the third step. It says, being convinced that self manifested in various ways what defeated us. Let me say it again. Being convinced that self manifested in various ways what defeated us. We're not the self, we're the us. And I define the self, it's not a thing, it's a mental activity. It's selfing. You know, a good friend of mine, that's his language. We got to talk about it some way. But it's a narrative in my head that creates a story about something that's not happening based on the past or the future. So that's the best way to describe it. So I'm going to continue to watch for this. And one of the exercises I tell people to do is listen, when you become consciously aware of that, whatever you're aware of can't be it. The awareness and what you're aware of can't be the same thing. This awareness, this great reality is deep down within us. I said it on page 55. This awareness of the essence of a spiritual experience, or more religious members call it God and consciousness, sixth sense, intuitive thought, insight, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to continue to watch for this condition that I used to identify as me. It's not me. Because you got it. Marty's got it. Kevin's got it. Well, if you got it, it ain't me. It's the condition we have. That's what I identify with. See, I thought I identified, when you shared from the podium, I thought I was identifying with you. I wasn't. I was identifying with the condition that was driving you. Very different. Just like when you spoke about deep spiritual things and I related to them, I wasn't relating to you. I was relating to that conscious awareness that was in me, that was in you. It was the same thing. I'll tell you a little story about a guy in I spoke at this meeting in Malibu, and this guy came up after the meeting. He goes, "I really want what you have." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, great." I said, "Why don't you stand over here until we're done with the little line? You know, you have that little line." Fritz always said that line was the most dangerous thing in AA. You know, you start believing what people tell you, you know. And so the line got done, and the guy came up to me and he said, "I want what you have." I said, oh, that's great. I said, "I'm going to tell you exactly how to get it." And he goes, "Okay." And he's standing there. I said, "When you leave the meeting, I want you to go to the liquor store. I want you to buy a bottle of vodka. I want you to wreck your friggin' life." And he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. I was very serious. He said, "You're kidding, right?" And I said, "No, I'm not kidding." I said, "You made a mistake in what you're asking for, though." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "You said you want what I have. You don't want what I have. Bro, you have what you have. You want what you have. And that's what recognized what I have. That's what you want." And he turned around and he walked away. Now, how did he know what I had? I mean, obviously, you know, it was in him or he couldn't have recognized it. See, we missed it, you know. I remember I was talking to a girl the other day. Oh my God, she was great. She said, when she first started working with Don Pritz, she said to Pritz, "I want what you have." And he said, "We can't have it." And she said, "Boy, I got really angry at that." And he said, "You can't have what I have, but you can have what you have." Same thing, same thing. So I want to watch for this condition. When I see this condition, one of the exercises I give people is I say this: as soon as you recognize this selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, say to it, "Thanks for sharing, next." Thanks for sharing, next. And the reason you're saying next is you're not fighting. You're letting it exhaust itself. It will run out of energy. It'll run out of fuel because you keep seeing the same thing over and over and over. This narrative, it constantly is trying to get your attention. Thanks for sharing, next. Thanks for sharing, next. And it's comical after a while. Some of the stories my head can come up with is just comical. I mean, I just laugh at them. But what happens is it doesn't stop in the way it seems like it stops. It stops in a different way. It stops in a way that the volume on it gets way turned down because nobody's listening. That's how it stops. So when that happens, there's a bigger picture that comes into view. It's almost like looking at a black and white TV, and you don't know there's anything but a black and white TV. And your buddy says, hey, come over to my house. And you go over there and you walk in, and he's got a friggin' colored television set. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. All of a sudden, wow, there's a colored TV here. See, this is terrible because we can't talk about this. We can describe it in metaphors, stories. That's why we do what we do, because it's experiential. You can't say, well, look, I'm going to tell you what a rose smells like. Until you smell a rose, you don't know what it smells like. So the process of the first 9 steps brought me up to this point where there was something that started to awaken in me, and I needed to cultivate that. And it was this conscious awareness. It was this intuitive sense, this sixth sense that they were talking about. When these crop up, we ask God to remove them. Here's the funny. We ask God, when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. Well, the at once thing was, it's like, well, why at once? Like, you ever seen a snowball roll down the hill when it's about this big? When it rolls down the hill, as it rolls, it gets bigger. And as it gets bigger, it picks up more and more stuff. That's what your mind does. See, the story, you start to tell the story, and then the story, oh, I lost my job. Oh, I'm never going to be able to pay my bills. Oh, I'm going to be homeless. Oh my God, what are they going to think of me? You know, it just picks up more and more stuff. So at once, that's the at once thing. So it doesn't get traction. We discuss them with someone immediately, make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. Well, I've done this 2 ways. Discussed it with people that jumped on board with the story, and we had a really big story going then. And then I've discussed it with people that had some clarity about the story I was in, which is very different. Because they were able to pull me out of the rabbit hole before I got too deep into it. But I did a lot of calling people, and they go, yeah, you got, man, I'd be pissed too. They jump right on the story with you. And you don't get anywhere. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. It's funny, it says we turn our thoughts. It doesn't say go help someone. It's like it's a shift. And they talk about this in Upon Awakening. They mention it, they mention thought or mental faculties, or Upon Awakening, talk about it 22 times in 2 paragraphs. They mention thought life. They mention thought or thinking like 22 times. I counted them the other day because I was trying to figure out how many times do they say this? Like they're referencing thinking. The main problem the alcoholic centers in his mind, right? Then we love and tolerance of others is our code. I've said this, man, oh man, the last 2 years, I've said this a bunch. We get a lot of narratives about what's going on in the world and who's running things. And I'm like, look, love and tolerance of others is our code, right? We can get into all those storylines, go down those rabbit holes. Just creates mental anxiety. It's not fear. It mimics fear. It's not fear. Fear is the highest intelligence of a human being. It's mental anxiety. It mimics fear. It says, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. Whoa, that's a heavy duty statement. I don't know. Like, am I still trying to manage and control life? Or am I seeing that thy will is being done and I'm a participant in it and I'm available to what's happening right now? Am I moving with the flow? You know, in real time, when I'm driving down the street and somebody cuts me off, am I moving with the flow? I used to run after them, act like I had a gun in the car. I didn't, but I acted like it. And I'd yell at them, you know, I'd just do it because, you know, they did it to me, right, Marty? They did it to me rather than, oh my God, the guy might be trying to get his wife to the hospital because she's pregnant, going to have a baby. So that's totally not accessible. That's not accessible. So there's a real simple, skillful means of solving that problem. Take your foot off the accelerator, Kurt, and slow down. No mental anxiety. Nobody's getting shocked. I mean, it's amazing. Just the simple things that I just didn't have access to. For by this time, sanity will have returned. And when I say sanity, I mean clarity of thought. And it means I had it at one time. And I love the way Don talked about this, Kois, when we were, you know, God, I'm going to jump out on a limb here and say this. So this book was written from a very, well, Protestant Christian perspective. It was very Western based. It was very sin based, right, wrong, right? So in a native tradition, they don't see us as born that way. We're born sacred. So return to that sanity means, for me, it means, oh, I don't suffer from the existential crisis of unworthiness. Why? Because I know that I'm an expression of God's will as Kurt. It's a sacred thing. And I know that Marty's an expression of God's will as Marty. And I know that Jimmy is an expression of God's will. Now, a lot of times I'll see the overlays, you know, what we do in the world, and that kind of blocks that. But there's no thing to become. This is about being. You already are that you're looking for. You already are that. We just, in AA, we go, well, we clear away the things that are blocking us from that. We get rid of our old ideas. We discover the obstacles in our path. Why? Where's the path? The path where I'm standing on it. It's here right now. Thy will is being done. It's happening right now. The only thing that takes me out of that is that mental discourse, intellectual storytelling based on past, guilt, remorse, morbid reflection, all the manifestations of this condition, not me, that is using me to express itself in the world. And it's using you, it's using everybody else. We'll seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we find this happen automatically. We see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us with any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's a miracle of it. See, it's not control. We did it. We had a group the other day that was great because a bunch of new people, and they had a debate. And the debate was, is this a disease or is this choice? And I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have been there. And well, sure, it's about choice when you're new. I mean, you don't say you were driven. You think you made a decision to pick up that drink. You don't say you were driven to pick it up. The big book said it. It said we lost the power of choice and drink. Well, so they're going back and forth with right, skillful means of how I can make the right choices. And I said, well, there's another option here, you guys. What if the problem's removed and you don't need to choose because it ain't there? I said, if you get up in the morning and you're hungry and you got to choose between bacon and eggs and cereal, there's a choice to be made. I said, but you get up in the morning and you're not hungry, what happens to the choice? It's not there. You don't need it. So I think that's what they're describing, the miracle of it. The problem's been removed. It's descriptive. We see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. That's the position of neutrality. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We haven't even sworn off. Instead, the problem's been removed. It doesn't exist for us. We're neither cocky nor afraid. That is our experience. That's how we react so long as we keep in a fit spiritual condition. Well, the spiritual condition is an internal condition for me. It's not an external condition. It's not based on my checkbook. I tried that, didn't work. Not based on the house I had, didn't work. How many cars I bought, didn't work. Boat, didn't work. Wife, didn't work. Kids, didn't work. It's not what's happening to me. It's how I'm reacting, responding to what's happening to me. Because stuff's going to happen. Life's going to happen. It's a different perception of the same environment. That's the way the book says it. It's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action, rest on our laurels. Here we go, Marty. This is I know that one. I did it. It's easy. It says, the only place in the book it probably says it's easy. Well, man, oh man, it was easy to let up on the spiritual program of action. I was too busy at work. I can't sponsor anybody. I don't have time. I'll help you sponsor somebody, but, I really can't sponsor anybody. I got kids now. Life's happening. It was easy. So I was listening to an intellectual discourse that was totally driving me right off the cliff. We are headed for trouble if we do. Well, yes, that was my, I got locked up 5150 twice after I drank after 19. I had never got locked up before. Got sent away to treatments. Koya sent me away to a treatment center in South Dakota. I'd never been sent away to a treatment center. They had to put an escort on me just to get me on the plane and get me to the treatment center. I got drunk on the plane in the back with the waitress, the stewardess, and sat down next to the escort, and she looked at me like, where did you get alcohol? I got off the plane, went to the bathroom, lost the escort, still had an ATM card, got drunk in the bar, missed my flight, so I had to drink for another 6 hours. By the time I got to treatment, they had to detox me again. And this is what we do, right? We're not cured of alcohol. And what we have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. I love this. I had too many years, not enough days. You've heard that before. It wasn't a daily reprieve. I didn't have a daily reprieve. I was wearing a badge of 19 years on me. And I kind of looked down my nose because you had 6 months because you don't know anything. And I didn't even know I was doing that. Didn't even know I was doing that. What's the best way to maintain a spiritual condition? I got this from a good friend of mine. He said the best way to maintain a spiritual condition is to be a spiritual condition. This is about being. It's not about doing. It's about being a spiritual condition. Every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. Vision. Koyas is big on vision. This is a big one. The vision of God's will. It says in here, how can I best serve thee? So how can I've been taken. Let's just simplify. I've been taken my whole life. Now I'm going to start giving. That was like the best way and the easiest way I could describe the starting point for that. What can I contribute? Rather, I ran a plumbing business for 30 years. I was always looking at how much money I could make. Somebody called and they said, oh, I got a small drain job. Nah, I'm too busy. I got this big job over here. What I come to find out was that little drain job that I turned away ended up being a big drain job. See, I didn't see what was going on. I wasn't participating in what was put right in front of me because I was looking way down the line at the money aspect because I was so far behind back here. See, I was missing the point. Just show up, be of service. When I started doing that in the plumbing business, I made more money and I had happier customers and I had less stress and less mental anxiety because I was just showing up and I could be present. I could be present for one job, not thinking about 9 other ones. See, it was like, I'm trying to put this in a kind of a real time. How's this work? When did we start this, Marty? It was like 6, wasn't it? Yeah.
You got 10 or 15 minutes, brother.
Okay. Well, we're going to roll through this here.
Oh, you're doing good. You're doing good. I like it.
So these are thoughts which must go with us constantly. They're thoughts like, okay, how can I be of service? How can I, how can I be, oh, wait a minute. You're getting carried away. Selfish dishonesty. Thanks for sharing. Next, I got a job to go to. I can't listen to you. Right. We can exercise a willpower all along as a proper use of the will. Much has been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction. I'm like, when did they talk about that? Right? They just, from him who has all knowledge and power. That kind of sounds like I don't have any. If we have carefully followed directions, we've begun to sense this flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we become God conscious. We've begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on the matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. Well, that's interesting, proper attitude, right? They talk about this back in the back of the book, but I want to reference this to that third step. Being convinced that self manifests in various ways what defeated us. See, I started to see, oh, wait a minute, I'm not the condition. With this attitude, you cannot fail. It says, I don't remember what page that's on. I think it's 55. Let me read it. Yes. We can only clear the ground a bit if our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself. Then, if you wish, you can join us on this broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. See, this is what I've been trying to point to. The consciousness of belief. It's not belief. The only reason I'm trying to believe something is because I don't believe it. That's what belief is. I'm trying to believe something that I don't believe. That's why I'm trying to believe it. They're saying the consciousness of this belief, like that was a rung on a ladder. The consciousness of my belief was the next rung. Like, oh, once you know it, what you're trying to believe, you will believe it in a totally different way than the way you were trying to believe it. Because it starts to integrate. It becomes experience. It becomes revelatory. It's like, that's why I was talking about faith. Faith's a modality of perception that gives reality to this great mystery. Oh, it's a reality. It's not a belief system. It's beyond belief. Faith is also can be used in a totally different way. Just like we talked about on page 52. If I have faith in a thought system that produces mental anxiety, well, it's just where I put the faith, right? It's like dependence. It's my dependence. So I'm shifting the dependence from a thought system to an intuitive system, to what's given. It's presented every day. I don't have to go looking for it. I just need to, when the phone rings, I go, I really need some help here. And the phone's ringing. I say, I don't have time to answer the phone. I'm trying to get an intuitive thought here. Phone keeps ringing. Phone keeps ringing. Phone keeps ringing. Pick up the phone. Like, I'm missing the point. I used to say this prayer, please help me. And then I get arrested, sent to the penitentiary. I'm like, see, it didn't work. I'm like, oh yeah, it worked fine. I asked for help. I got the help. I got arrested. I got separated from liquor. I never saw it. God uses what's available. Well, that's what was available. I mean, let me get back here. I lost my page. So it says, it'd be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite valuable suggestions. I'm going to run through this real fast because I don't want to miss this. When we retire, we constructively review our day. I already talked about that. I couldn't do that. I was doing it through the lens of guilt and shame. I was doing it through the lens of this condition that had me. It was destructive. Oh, I used 4-letter words. I screwed up. You're stupid, that kind of stuff. Koyas is the one that really straightened me out on this one. It says, were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Here we go again, condition of self. Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking what we could do for others and what we could pack into the stream of life? And I love this because I looked it up. The Stream of Life is a poem by Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore. Bill stole a bunch of stuff. He stole a bunch of stuff out of varieties of religious experience. I mean, he stole stuff from everywhere. And I couldn't figure out Stream of Life, where the hell did he get that? And when I was looking at Stepping Stones, and there was a list of all the books that were on his shelf, and I was just looking at the list, and I saw Rabindranath Tagore, and I was like, that son of a gun. Stream of Life. Music of the Spheres. I mean, come on. This is not new terminology. So if you haven't read that poem, it's called The Stream of Life by Rabindranath Tagore. Read it, because it gives you a real sense of the question he's asking. But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. What's that? Drift into self, the condition. For that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness. I always make a big deal of this. It does not say we ask God to forgive us. That's not what it says. We ask God's forgiveness. Now, I know what God's forgiveness, the experience of that is. It's grace. It was the experience that I experienced when I got released from the condition, when I got released from alcohol, when I experienced unconditional love. I experienced a moment of peace, a moment of wonder, a moment of awe. There was nothing wrong. This was God's forgiveness. I'm not talking about it anthropomorphically, like there was an entity that bestowed himself on me. It was a direct experience with everything. I was connected to everything. God's forgiveness, this unconditional love. I heard it in the meeting when you guys started. I mean, you guys were so enthusiastic and just welcoming to people. I mean, it's friggin' crazy. Upon awakening, and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. So from that place, that's the position of neutrality. Let's just say that. From the position of neutrality, I'm going to ask for the corrective measures, not what I did wrong. The corrective measures are how I got off track. The corrective measures on track, off track, on track. Give me a couple more minutes. Koyas told me a story about him and Johnny Looking Cloud. Johnny Looking Cloud basically took him out. He went up to get some help from him. Johnny Looking Cloud listened to him ramble for about 15 minutes, whittled for a little while because, he just knew he was rambling. He took him outside and he took a stick and he drew a line in the sand. And he told Koyas to walk the line. And he started walking the line, and Johnny Looking Cloud came over and he pushed him off the line to the left. And his footprints hit the dirt. And he said, now get back on the line. And Koyas said, well, what'd you do that for? He said, never mind, get back on the line. Got back on the line, walked a little further, he pushed him off to the right. And he said, Koyas said, after he did this 5 or 6 times, he was really getting pissed off. This was really irritating. He got to the end of the line, and Johnny Looking Cloud said, turn around. He said, turn around, look at the line. You think this path is that line. It's not. The path is, and he put his hands out like this, from the edge of the footprints over here and the edge of the footprints over here. This is, you get off the path, you get on the path, off the path. This is the path, off the path, on the path. And it clicked for me. Oh, corrective measures. Oh, constructively review your day. Oh, mistakes. Oh. I mean, it was huge because I'd always been doing it through the lens of the condition, self. Guilt, remorse, self-pity. You're not good enough. See? On awakening, let's think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. And he said to me, what do you think your plans are? I said, oh, it's all the stuff I write down, what I'm going to do. And he said, it's not what they're talking about. I said, what do you mean that's not what they're talking about? He said, your plans for the day are how you're going to be. This is coming from your corrective measures. So if I'm dismissive to Linda, how am I going to be? Let's say the corrective measure is not to be less dismissive, which is the opposite. Maybe you need to be more present with her and listen. That's a corrective measure. That's your plan for the day. It's not what you're going to do, it's how you're going to be. And he said, out of right being will come right action. And I seem to have the cart before the horse all the time before, which was just managing well. It says, before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, self-seeking motives. Well, this is the deal. This is like a regular deal every day at the beach. I go down, I say, God, sometimes I'll go, God, thanks for directing my thinking. I don't even ask because it's already directed. So what am I asking for? It says, God, direct my thinking, divorce from self-pity. Self-pity is usually in the past. Dishonest is I don't see in the moment with clarity. I'm seeing through a narrative. And self-seeking is in the future. So what am I asking for? I'm asking to be present. Direct my thinking. When my thinking is divorced from those things, my thought life's on a higher plane. What's that? Presence. You're here. Under these conditions, we can apply our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. See, thinking, thought life. So mental faculties, creativity, thinking, language, the way I say things. Rather than say things from a, you don't see more. There's not more seeing. There's no, you're not seeing more. There's more seeing. Let's say it like that. There's two different things going on there. So your language starts to shift because you're starting to see from a different platform. Oh, I didn't surrender. I got surrendered. Oh, if I surrendered, I was in control. In thinking about our day, may face indecision, right? Pause, agitated, or doubtful, right? We may not be able to determine which course to take here. God, we ask God for inspiration, intuitive thought, but we relax, we take it easy. It's funny, he doesn't mention meditation. He mentions meditation, but he doesn't mention modalities of meditation. An intuitive thought or decision. We relax, take it easy. We don't struggle. We're often surprised how the right answers come after we tried this for a while. We've all had this experience. We try to remember a phone number. Harder we try to remember it, the farther we push it back in our mind. As soon as you direct your thoughts somewhere else, the phone number comes forward, or a name. It's like that. It's practical. What used to be a hunch or occasional inspiration becomes a working part of the mind. Being still in experience, you're going to pay a big price, guaranteed. It's just part of the learning curve. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration we come to rely on. Our thinking will or our thinking will? Which one? You pick. We usually conclude the period of meditation. Well, hold on a second. When do they talk about meditation here? See? With a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step to be. That we be given whatever we need takes. We ask especially for freedom from self-will. And here's how I change this. This is just, we're not asking freedom from self-will. We're asking freedom from self's will. It's not mine. It's self's will. And are careful to make no request for ourselves. We may ask for others if we ask for ourselves if others would be helped. We're careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us wasted a lot of time doing that. It doesn't work. You can easily see why. So I'm really out of time, you guys, and I don't want to go over the time deal. I thought I'd have plenty of time, but you know, that's always the case. Let me read one last thing.
Kurt, take us right to the place where you want to finish there. I know you're only 5 or 10 minutes away from it, man. You just running through it's beautiful.
Okay. So it says, if circumstances warrant, we ask our friends to join us in morning meditation. Wives, or, you know, I've done that before, and to be honest with you, I do that myself. I love it. I do. I'm a solitary kind of guy. I like to go to the beach. I like to be by myself. I like to be with the Creator by myself. That's just my deal. It doesn't mean I wouldn't do it with somebody else, but that's my deal. Linda has her process. I can have my process. We talk about it all the time. I don't have a religious denomination. I'm a member of all of them. I mean, you know, I think there are different dialects of one language, and they're based on culture and time, and I hear all of them. So that's my thing. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles. There are many helpful books. Suggestions about these may be obtained by a priest, rabbi, guru, whatever. Be quick to see where religious people are right. It doesn't say, it says be quick to see where they're right, not that they're right. This gift of discernment is part of the awakening, this intuitive thought. Where they're right, not that they're right. It sounds like this. It has a resonance. Doesn't sound like this. That's the difference. It has a resonance. You read it and you go, man, oh man, that just boom, speaks to me, right? As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. I already told you that one. That was, that was the best thing Koyos ever gave me. I swear to God, I tell him that all the time. Best thing he ever taught me was how to pause, because it allowed a space for a reactive energy to stop and a responsive energy to flower. It was very different energy. We constantly remind ourselves, we are no longer running the show. You know what? I never was running the show. I was a victim of that delusion. I was never running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times, thy will be done. I don't say it that way. I say thy will is being done. Because when I said thy will be done, it sounded like it needed to happen in the future. I recognize it presently. It's happening. We are then in much less danger of fear, anger, worry, self-pity, foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We don't tire so easily, for we're not burning up energy as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit, I would say, self, not ourselves. It works. It really does. It does. I'm telling you, it works. It's all I ever wanted. It's all I ever wanted. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us the simple way we outlined. But that's not all. There's more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12, and I'll add with this and close with it. Faith without works is dead, but works without faith is just self-propulsion. It's just managing well. I needed that shift in the beginning. I needed to see that faith had been involved all along. It was just in the wrong thing. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks for the extra time, Marty.